Hello and welcome to this free mandolin lesson. Over the next 15 minutes or so we're going to introduce you to the world of reading music and more specifically how you turn the blobs on the page into notes on the mandolin. Everything in this video, and this is more important than any of my other videos, is included in a free PDF that has all of the diagrams and all the description of everything we're talking about. That's linked in the description below, so please do have that in front of you while we work through this, because there'll be a few examples in there that you can try. That's a very good question. You can spend your whole life never needing to read a blob of music and have a wonderful time playing music, and it's not a problem. All I'm suggesting to you is, let's say, for example, you hear a great tune, a great Celtic tune called The Silver Spear, and you'd love to be able to play it. And you put it into Google, and the first result that comes up, and quite often one of the biggest resources on the internet is thesession.org. There's an old Celtic, English, folk, many American tunes. Fortunately, they're all in standard notation. So unless you can find someone to convert that into tab, you'll never be able to play this beautiful tune, which sounds like this. Before we progress, I am going to make two assumptions about where you are at. I am going to assume that you can read tab. If not, I do have a PDF on how to read tab. It's very quick to pick up tab. That's one of the best things about it. So that is linked below. So please do make sure you can read tab first. It's a very useful stepping stone into reading music because it teaches you timing and time signatures more than anything. So whole notes, half notes, eighth notes, and then 4/4 and jig time. The other assumption is that you have a rough knowledge of note names on the mandolin fretboard. So even if you knew no note names, we should all be familiar with G, D, A, E. If that's the starting point, that's no problem. But it's a useful thing to be, even if you can't read music and don't want to read music, it's useful to be able to go sort of G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Just knowing note names without knowing the blobs is extremely useful. So just spend a minute and sort of think, just make sure it's ingrained. G, D, A, E. The Australian hello, good day. G, D, A, E. Now, let's read some music. This is what a blank piece of notation looks like. There's always 5 lines, and there's this symbol at the front. Now, firstly, the lines are quite often called staves, but I will call them lines. Only the most ardent classical musician calls them staves, just call them lines. This symbol is very important. This is called the treble clef. In music, there are 4 main types of clef. There's the treble, the bass, the alto, and tenor. On the mandolin, because of where our notes are in sort of the harmonic range, we can only read music in the treble clef. If you find a bit of music with bass, alto, or tenor, just throw it out. We can't read it. You have to convert it into treble clef. So only this symbol should be at the start of your music. Now let's put some blobs on the page, and this is where we start to diverge massively from tab. So in tab you have 4 lines, and each line represents 1 string. So the notes, the numbers in tab only ever go sort of on the lines, because it means you're on that string. In music, you can have blobs that are on the lines, they can go in between the lines, they can go below the lines, and they can go above the lines. Now in this lesson, which I'm calling part 1, because reading music is a big subject, in this lesson we're just going to consider the first 2 elements. We're just going to consider the notes in the lines and on the lines. Now we need to put some names to those blobs. So the notes that go on the line, so where the line goes through the note, they're these notes, E, G, B, D, and F. And then the notes in between the lines, so in the spaces, a lot of people say, are F, A, C, and E. And at this point, the best thing you could do is think of a little way of remembering those notes. Just pick one set, because if you learn, let's say you learnt the notes in the spaces, then you know that if the lowest note is an F, the note underneath that on the next line would be an E, because music is alphabetical. So you can either choose the notes on the lines, E, G, B, D, F, and most musicians go for every good boy does fine. A little mnemonic to remember it. If you want to think of the spaces, that just spells face, F-A-C-E. So unfortunately, when you first start reading music, you have to just remind yourself of those. So for example, I've given you the first line of Happy Birthday. No mandolin tab, we're not playing mandolin yet. We're just trying to work out what the name of the note is on the music. So here is the first phrase of Happy Birthday, which, if you just to remind you. Now, if we take those very first two notes, think of our mnemonic. It's a note that's through the second line. So every good G. So that's a G. And then the next note is on the second space. So that would be, we're now on F-A-C-E, so F-A. So it's an A. So we've got G to A. And then the second note goes back to our original one, so we can just cheat and choose G again. Then our third note is on the third space, so F-A-C. So that's a C note. And then the next note is, well, actually, I'm going to stop there. I think you should now fill the rest in. So use your little mnemonics to just get a little pencil and write in what you think the next notes are. And I will reveal the answers now. Now let's put those notes onto the fretboard. The best way of doing it is string by string. So if we start on the A string, and if we think about the exercise we just did, that F-A, so the second space is where our A string starts. And then if we go alphabetically, A, B, C, D. So we've got 4 notes on the A string, and for now I've put the tab back in. So A, B, C, D. 0, 2, 3, 5 is A, B, C, D. And it's at this point you need to start making the connection of going, that note on the second space is an A. On my mandolin, my A is here. That second note, which is on the third line, every good boy, is a B. My B is here. It's like a three-way connection. So the note on the page, the name in your head, and where that is on the fretboard. So A, B, C, D. Just play that round and say it out loud with me. A, B, C, D, C, B, A, B, C, D, C, B, A. Just keep saying it round and round. Get it ingrained in your head. And let's do the same exercise, but on a different string. So, this just slightly falls out of parameters, but if we did the D is the first note underneath the lines, but we won't cover that, so just take my word for it. So the notes on the D string, D, E, F, and G. Because if you let's think about the G, it's on the second line, every good. That's a G. That's a G. So the notes on the D string, D, E, F, G, F, D, E. Say them out loud as you play them. D, E, F, G, F, D, E. So again, you need to start making the connection between the first line of every good boy. It's every, so it's an E, and that's an E. So there's my E. So when the dot is on the first line of the music, it's there on the mandolin. When the dot's on the first space, it's an F. I've got an F here. When the dot's on the second line, every good, G. I've got a G here. So you need to start making that connection. So we should now hopefully have 2 strings worth of note names and blobs on the page. So if you play it with me, let's grab the mandolin, play this with me. I've taken the tab away now, but you do have the note names. So we're just going to play all of those notes and say them out loud as you do it. So here we go. 3, 4. So D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. And back down. C, B, A, G, F, E, D. That's not any kind of musical scale that makes any sense. We're just literally converting the blobs on the page to a note on the fretboard. That's the main aim of this lesson. I now have 2 examples on the PDF that you should now be able to play. It might take you a while, and by the way, I've recently started learning piano, and I've never read bass clef, which is one of the other lines that I said doesn't work on the mandolin, and it's still taking... There's different mnemonics for the bass clef, and I'm still year and a half in. It takes me a minute to work out. So music is not something that once you've learned it sticks straight away. It takes a bit of practice just to get that association of what that blob is, where it is on the line, where it is on the fretboard. So please stick with it. But anyway, we have Mary Had a Little Lamb. And if you need to, get the pencil out. First thing, go through and write the note names underneath all of them. But you should, hopefully, that will, given a few minutes, have something that sounds like this. So that's what those blobs sound like, and you do have the tools now to be able to play that without the tab. So just pause this video and take a minute and try and do it. And I've also given you boil them cabbages down, which is slightly simpler. But again, write the note names underneath and then remind yourself where they are on the mandolin fretboard. If you're still with me, hopefully you are, we have one element left of music, and that is the sharps and flats. They have a huge impact on what happens. When you're reading music, if you see a symbol that looks like this, it is not a hashtag from Twitter, it is a sharp. And what that does to a note is it raises it by 1 semitone, or a half step if you're in America, and on the mandolin, that means it raises it by 1 fret. So in the example I've given, let's go back to our notes on the A string, A, B, C, D, C, B, A. If there was a sharp placed in front of the third note, the C, we raise that by 1 fret to the 4th fret. So that phrase now becomes A, B, C sharp, D, C sharp, B, A. So that's what you need to remember. If something is sharp, it raises it by 1 fret. So we won't go into the theory of sort of why there are certain sharps or not sharps. You don't need to worry about it. Just remember, if you see a sharp, that raises it by 1 semitone or a half step, or on the mandolin fretboard, that's 1 fret. If you see this symbol, that's called a flat, and it has the opposite effect of a sharp. It lowers the note by 1 fret. So for example, if you take, again, the notes on the A string, A, B, C, D, C, B, A, and the flat symbol was placed in front of the second note, the B, it becomes B flat. So we lower that note by 1 fret, or a semitone, or we lower it by a half step, depending if you're American. So that now becomes A, B flat, C, D, C, B flat, A. You don't play both, it means you'll play the B flattened. Musicians are either lazy or we like things neat, depending on your opinion of us. So what we do, instead of, let's say a composer wants every time a C is used in a piece of music, they actually want it to be C sharp, which is very common. That would happen in a lot of our normal keys that we play in. It looks quite messy if every time the C note comes up, you have to put a sharp symbol next to it. It's a lot of writing out. So we take all those notes and we actually just put it at the start of the line. So when you're reading the normal music, you will see a C, just a normal C. But at the start of the line, tells you, but every time you see a C, it's sharp, so you need to play that. That's the hardest part in music. You're constantly having to remember what's a sharp, or the same would be flats. If it was flats, it would be pushed at the start of the line. So that is the hardest thing about music, is remembering what's supposed to be a sharp when you get to it. So just to summarise, and before we do a couple of examples, just the main points from reading music and playing them on the mandolin. So the first thing you need to do is you need to remember your mnemonics. So either every good boy does fine for the notes through the lines, or FACE, face, for the notes in the spaces. Then it's really important that you're familiar with the mandolin fretboard, and a good place to start is just A. Just know that that's an A instantly. You should not even have to think about it. A. And then you can go from there, B, C, D, and then you can convert that into notes on the page. And then finally, just watch out for your flats and sharps. You have to, every line will remind you what's supposed to be a sharp and a flat. And then when you get to that note, you just have to remember to add the sharp to it when you get to it. Now, a couple of examples. Example 1, and I'll play them. I'm not giving you the tab. So just pause this video, write the notes out, try it out, and then I'll play them so you know what you're going for. F sharp, F sharp, F sharp, F sharp, So I really hope that with everything I've said in this video, you have been able to play 3 pieces of music. So it's like nice, simple pieces of music, but with no tab on the mandolin. It obviously isn't vastly expanding your repertoire yet, but very quickly, a lot of fiddle tunes, they're not complicated. Once you've got these main points, you can read a lot of fiddle tunes. If you've enjoyed this video, please let me know, and I will do part 2. If no one likes this video, if no one watches it, there won't be a part 2, but I wanted to try it, so I hope you've enjoyed it. Get in touch via mandomic.com, sign up to the mailing list where we'll go back to normal tunes and chords next month. We'll see you then.